stragglers come in. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Come on. Wake up. Welcome to Bonn, and I'm so happy to see so many of you here at the World Conference Center. Welcome also to our live stream audience. You all are on tape. We are being watched by lots of people from all over the place at the official conference website, globalfestivalofideas.org. So we are so excited to have all of you. And it is now my profound pleasure to officially open the Global Festival of Ideas for Sustainable Development, presented to you by the UN SDG Action Campaign and the Overseas Development Institute, otherwise known as ODI, and this list of fantastic partners that you see up here. So can we give them all a hand for having us, please? So I'm Nadira Hira, and I'm going to be your guide, at least here in the plenary hall, over these next 3 days. And just so you know a little bit about me, I'm a writer, which for me has meant everything from being an editor at Fortune magazine to talking to major organizations and audiences just like you about the issues facing this planet, and young people in particular. So I'm passionate about solutions, about innovation, and most of all about people, which is why I am so over the moon about both our organizing partners today. They think like that too. And I'll tell you how I know. When I first met the team of the UN SDG Action Campaign, before the SDGs were even launched, they were busy spreading the My World survey, getting millions of real, regular people around the world from all walks to weigh in on the goals in an unprecedented way that made them part of the process. And when I met the team from ODI just recently, I was beyond thrilled to learn that this was going to be able to be called the world's first playable conference. This is exciting, you guys, because at the heart of it is a game called 2030 Hive Mind, which hopefully some of you have already started playing, that they envision specifically to put you all at the center of doing this work. These are disruptive ideas, executed in such thoughtful ways, ways that are meant to stimulate enduring change and do all of it through meaningful collaboration. And that's what we're all here to do today, to meaningfully collaborate. So we hope that you take that to heart. And we hope that you recognize that this is all done in the spirit of these SDGs, these global goals, because these goals represent the people's agenda. And you are the people here in this room and out there in the world. So that's what we're going to go do today. We are going to keep the experiment going. Are you ready? Are you ready? So it is my profound pleasure over the next 3 days to say that we'll be tackling some of the biggest development challenges through debates, policy simulations, and interactive games. And I promise you will be inspired. But I bet you won't just be inspired, you're going to be inspired to act. So with that, I'm going to just go through some quick housekeeping, and then we'll get started with our program. First, please feel free to social media as much as you like. On Twitter, our handle is @GlobalFestIdeas, and you can use the hashtag GFI4SD on Twitter, Instagram, any of the other platforms that you use. We would love that. Please also note that the main language for the festival will be English, but we will be live translating to French, German, and Spanish throughout. If you haven't received a translation headset, please see one of our volunteers in the lobby. And our volunteers are all back here. They are wearing these blue shirts. Wave. Hi, guys. And they'll be with us the entire time. Fire escapes are also clearly marked here at the exits in case of emergency. And on your desks, you should all see a piece of colored paper. Guard it with your life. Don't write on it, don't stomp on it, and maybe later on it'll be part of something magical that you'll be really excited about. So, I promise it will be. With that, we've got an action-packed agenda for this morning's plenary session. After welcome remarks by our organizing partners, we'll hear speeches from Ashok Sridharan, Lord Mayor of Bonn, and Dr. Alam Murabit, SDG Global Advocate and UN High-Level Commissioner. We'll have an introduction to that conference game I mentioned, 2030 Hive Mind, before a coffee break. Then after the coffee break, we'll be joined by 5 speakers for the high-level multi-stakeholder plenary, where we'll hear about action to achieve the SDGs and leave plenty of time for you to ask questions through our very exciting interactive software. Lunch will be after that at 12:30. And so now, please help me welcome the representatives from our 2 organizing partners who will set the scene for the next 3 days. And everybody over this conference has incredible titles, so please forgive me for actually reading them because I don't want to get them wrong. Please welcome Mitchell Toomey, Global Director of the UN SDG Action Campaign, and Ishbel Matheson, Director of Public Affairs and Communications at ODI.
We're finally here. It's been a long ride, and I'm very happy to see this crowd and in this location. I'd first like to thank the Lord Mayor of Bonn for hosting us and the wonderful dignitaries we have joining us today. And I'd like to give a very special welcome to all of you to Bonn for this first ever Global Festival of Ideas for Sustainable Development. The UN SDG Action Campaign is delighted to host this unique festival with generous support from the federal government of Germany, working in close partnership with the Overseas Development Institute and an array of fantastic partners. Amazing creativity has gone into this event, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. These are ideas, this is an idea melting pot, we call it, for thinking, passion, and innovation to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. We found that interactivity and innovation are keys to attracting passionate people and encouraging new thinking. And as such, we're thrilled that the festival brings together thought leaders, business managers, institutions, and activists from over 80 countries. And we'll be joined by gaming experts and policy simulators for the world's first playable conference, as you've heard. And I think that that's a fascinating concept. The festival, like all of the work of the UN SDG Action Campaign, is designed around you, the participants. We've worked hard to bring together people from around the world, and they've figured out very interesting ways to bring the SDGs to life. And many have traveled a long distance to get here today. For example, Carol Arambala from Mexico. Carol mobilized hundreds of volunteers across Mexico to go into their communities, hear what the people were saying, and also actually inform them and educate them around the goals. We have Gilles van Schaik from Holland, who just returned from a bicycle tour in 8 countries in Africa, where he sought out innovations and shared them across the network of those countries with youth ambassadors. 3,000 volunteers to undertake the My World survey, and on their own they built a wonderful SDG mobile application in the Mandarin language. And we have Heike from Kantar Public, who worked with us to develop and field test hundreds of questions, or 100 questions to activate and stimulate conversation. And they tested in Thailand and Kenya and other places. Fascinating. So this festival showcases these and other innovations and tools and approaches to SDG implementation, with the goal of increasing mutual understanding, mobilizing partnerships and resources to drive action for sustainable development. This year's festival is the inaugural event of an annual series that will be held here in Bonn by the SDG Action Campaign. And it's designed to meet the needs of the global community who are out there trying to achieve these SDGs. The actors and advocates, and to ensure that they have innovative tools and approaches to accomplish their mission. So to ensure by 2030 that the SDGs become a reality for everyone, everywhere, we must innovate in the way we think and in the way we communicate about the goals, how we build partnerships, and how we push for a more people-centered design and action at all levels. So thank you, and over the course of the next 3 days, I look forward to talking to each and every one of you and learning all of your fascinating stories. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mitch. Well, it couldn't be more timely for us all to be here together to think about how we speed up progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. We all know the progress we've made to date, more children than ever surviving till the age of 5, that sharp drop in extreme poverty, the fast pace of new technology that's helping to shift towards a green economy. These are just a few of the huge leaps forward we've taken. But we also know that progress has been unequal and benefited far too few, and it isn't guaranteed. If the upheavals of the past year have told us anything, they've also told us that progress is fragile, and fragile in rich countries as well as poor, as we've seen only in the past few days. So the SDGs were signed out only 17 months ago, and some of you may even have been there in New York. but already it feels like a very different world. To truly leave no one behind, which is the underpinning principle of the SDGs, is more important than ever. Without the inclusive, prosperous societies that we all want, we risk conflict, division, and unravelling of the progress that we've made. So at ODI, one of the world's leading global think tanks on development, we've been looking at how to move from the rhetoric to the reality of leave no one behind. Because if you're a planning minister in the developing world, what you want to know is how you solve your problem now, not reach a perfect solution at some point in the future. At this Global Festival of Ideas, what we'd really love to see is some new progress, new pathways to progress, new ideas, sharing together new approaches. Together, we'll be thinking about some of the toughest development challenges: inequality in a globalizing world, promoting economic growth and environmental sustainability, that's tough, and coping with the shocks and disruptors like migration, economic crises, displacement, the things that blew us off track. We'll also be considering, very importantly, how the SDGs are implemented here in Germany. You'll be able to attend and participate in some of the things that Mitch was talking about, the policy platforms, the lightning talks. We'll be hearing from an amazing array of speakers. None of this would have been possible without the extraordinary efforts of our partners in this. And some of these you'll see on screens around the building, and they will be leading the sessions that you're participating in. And their knowledge and expertise and the efforts that they put into this conference have been truly tremendous. We've also been talking about the world's first playable conference. Nadira mentioned it, Mitch mentioned it, we're all mentioning it. In a few minutes' time, a little later this morning, I'll be explaining exactly what 2030 Hive Mind is all about and how to get involved. But at the heart of that, that's collaboration too, collaborating to reach the SDGs. So there's plenty to get involved in over the next few days. We really hope you'll participate, learn and enjoy yourselves. And please do have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you both. Since I have you here, I'm in charge, guys. Can I ask you to tell us in one sentence what you are most looking forward to learning at the Global Festival?
I am most looking forward to learning how several hundred people simultaneously are going to learn and play 2030 Hive Mind.
It's exciting, so they've got an assignment.
Well, in any event like this, there's always a fantastic happenstance where two people who never thought they had something to gain from each other find each other and start something fantastic. And I bet there's at least one of those relationships that will develop here, and I'm anxious to see that happen.
So more partnerships. Thank you both so much. Wonderful. So it is no coincidence that we are here in beautiful Bonn, a city that is increasingly renowned for its sustainability. Some of you will have enjoyed the carnival festivities earlier this week, yes? And even the site is historic as the former Parliament building, as many of you will know, and really the fact of the matter is there's a lot to love here in Bonn. So I am delighted to welcome up to the podium our city host, the Lord Mayor of Bonn, Ashok Sridharan, to tell us more about what makes Bonn so incredibly special. Please.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Toomey, Mrs. Matheson, Mrs. Hoven, Ambassador Jung, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for kindly inviting me to participate in today's opening plenary session of the Global Festival of Ideas for Sustainable Development. First of all, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome the participants from all over the world to Bonn. Bonn, the small but cosmopolitan city and international location on the banks of the Rhine that has become Germany's United Nations city and a hub for sustainability in the world. I'm convinced that Bonn, where the United Nations is shaping a sustainable future, is the most suitable location for this global festival of ideas. And for this first meeting, I wish all participants every success, hoping that it will be followed by many gatherings that will inspire action around the globe. Given the great number of stakeholders here in Bonn, our city is also a most suitable location for the UN SDG Action Campaign. Today, I would like to congratulate you on the official launch of the campaign in our city. My best wishes go to Mr. Toomey and to his dedicated team. We are very proud to have you on board. Thanks for being here. This new settlement has met with great public interest in our city, which has to do with the significance of Agenda 20 and the high awareness in Bonn for the Sustainable Development Goals. Agenda 2030 is an appeal to all of us to change old patterns and find new solutions for today's challenges. The UN SDG Action Campaign will raise awareness for this important issue from here, helping to change our perceptions and creating more space for citizen input. My special thanks go to our federal government, specifically to the Foreign Office and to the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development for promoting and supporting this important settlement in Bonn. A particular thank you goes to Mr. Toomey again and his team for their great commitment and for reaching out to all of us from the very beginning. The City of Bonn has been pleased to support the relocation to Bonn and the important work to the Global Campaign Office on site. You will have seen the banners at Häuserle, which is the street very nearby. For instance, picturing all 17 SDGs. We have gladly helped UN SDG's team to establish their center here in Bonn and to get connected with stakeholders and the local public. As a joint contribution that we are rendering to this global festival with our annual partner Engagement Global, we will reach out to the public, focusing on the communication on the SDGs at local level. Thanks for your attention.
It's wonderful. And now I'm very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Ala Murabit. Ala is a medical doctor, a UN high-level commissioner on health, employment, and economic growth, one of 17 Global Sustainable Development Goal advocates, and an MIT Media Lab Director's Fellow. She has been a passionate advocate for women, and many of you will know her in particular for her TED Talk, What My Religion Really Says About Women, which has been viewed more than 2 million times. It is a must-watch, absolutely, if you haven't seen it already. And Ala, we are so absolutely excited that you could join us in Bonn, so please, the floor is yours.
I always love podiums. They make me look so tall. Yeah, it really brings out my height. So I am absolutely thrilled to be here and honored to be here. I actually first met Mitchell very serendipitously at a conference in Miami where we were both put in quite last minute. And over the course of several days, I got to see him in action, meeting with as many stakeholders as possible, talking to sects of the community and society that you would least anticipate to be involved in the SDGs, and with a passion that I think has really kind of built our relationship forward. So I'm very excited to be here. When I was writing out what I was going to say today, the news was on. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever the news is on lately, I start needing some sort of reinforcements, some hot chocolate, a nap, to watch a comedy show to get over what's happening in the world. And so naturally I did the only thing I could possibly, sorry.
If we want you to be...
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
No reason to confine you. It is an innovation conference.
Great. Now you can really see how tall I am. So when the news is on, and so the first thing I do is my family has these WhatsApp groups. And we have one dedicated to each grandchild, to each of my nephews and niece. So 3 different groups. And I go in these groups and I see pictures of my nephews and my niece. They make me feel like the world is going to be okay. Mainly because my niece still has not taken off the Spider-Man costume that she's been wearing since Halloween. and because she dominates in almost every single game they play. She is, in my opinion, a genius. We can steer it in either direction, either diabolically or positively, but there's hope there. And the second thing that gave me hope this past month, I would say, where every time you turn on the news, every time you look up, something is happening, something has changed, a different group is at risk, be it, one day Muslims, the next day the transgender community, the LGBTQ community, and the Jewish community, is the fact that today I'm joined by 5 of my interns. Now, this might seem like a little thing, but my interns have come from as far as Singapore to be here today. And not a single one of them worked on the Sustainable Development Goals even 6 months ago. Or maybe I should rephrase that. They worked on the Sustainable Development Goals without even really knowing what they were. They worked towards gender equality and health security and international legal support and assistance. Those were goals and aspirations they have. And they are not unique. When we put out a call for interns, we get hundreds upon hundreds of applications. And the ideas, we ask one very simple question. What does leadership mean to you? And the responses and ideas and feedback we get is so incredible that I steal quite a bit of it and use it in speeches like this. But so I asked them yesterday the same question you asked, Mitchell. What are you hoping to get out of this week? What is it you want most to learn? What is it you want most to see? Who do you want most to speak to? And across the board, they said, we want to learn how we can cooperate, who we can cooperate with on the Sustainable Development Goals, what we can tangibly do. Their exact words are actually meaningful partnerships. And I think, if anything, this is what it's all about. Unlikely allies sitting together on an agenda that is for all of us, that none of us can be excluded from. Now, as it was previously mentioned, there is one goal that I am most passionate about. Now, I'm a medical doctor and I'm very passionate about health, but it's gender equality that gets me out of bed every morning. It is, I'm glad that was funny. But it is. It's a desire and a drive to ensure that women and girls around the world have the same opportunities as their male counterparts. It's the recognition that if we were to educate women and girls, just educate women and girls, then we see changes not only in general equality, in corruption, in governance, in peace and security, but it's actually the second highest need for climate change action. You can be working in any space, in economic growth. The combined education and employment of women and girls is the single greatest economic contributor of our time, greater than the growth of China and India combined. We are diminishing ourselves of this huge opportunity because we are not talking about the fact that fundamental to each and every single goal, be it zero hunger, where women provide most of local farming and most of local foods in the developing world, in the vast majority of the world, be it affordable and clean energy, be it education, where women make up to 80% of teachers in the global south. We can talk about all of these goals, and they are fundamentally interconnected, but we have to recognize that there is one that can actually set us on the right course, and that without it, we're not even on the track. And that is the full education, employment, and empowerment of women and girls globally. You can all clap now. That was a moment. It's okay. It's still early. I'll give you a minute to warm up. But so when I speak to this, and when I have my young niece who is 2 years old, going on 20, and my 15-year-old sister and my 12-year-old sister who tell me that all my ideas are irrelevant and archaic, and my mother who tells me that I still need time to grow into my ideas, I realize that the only way we're actually going to have these solutions, the only way we can have tangible conversations, the only way we can all genuinely work on these challenges is if we're all sitting together and we're being as inclusive as possible. And that just doesn't mean that, you have members from UN teams or people from the city of Bonn, but rather that we open this conversation as widely as possible. I was promised a pin if I was a super player in the 2030 hive mind game. And I am not a super player, but I'm negotiating that if I convince enough of you guys to take on this game, I'll get the pin. But the reason I bring it up is because I think it is actually a new platform. Not specifically the game, although that is a facet of it, but taking this conversation out of rooms like this. Having these conversations live streamed and actually being able to respond to people who are watching at home, who say, listen, I'm not really interested in the Sustainable Development Goals. That sounds kind of like UNEs, but I really want to talk to you about climate change in my community. Or I really actually am quite curious about economic growth and youth unemployment and how that impacts violence, and if it impacts violence and what I can do about it. And saying this is not a conversation where we need to be talking about every single goal, because if you can work on one, if each of us works on one, these 3 days are an incredible opportunity for us to meet people we normally would not meet, to have conversations we normally would not have, and to challenge ourselves, to look at today's world, a world that I think many people in this room feel is slowly going in the wrong direction, and say, okay, so this is the reality of the situation. What can we do about it? It's not going anywhere. The impact of a head of state or of a political movement is still going to be there even if that head of state leaves. There are societal changes that we have to address. This is the reality. So what can we individually and collectively do to change it? Thank you.
I officially love Germany because we are ahead of schedule. Which means that, Alla,
You're welcome.
if you wouldn't mind, maybe we could have a bit of a chat.
Sure.
If that's okay. Yes, if you want, let's sit. First of all, thank you so much for all of this.
Mitchell got to sit in these chairs, so I have to too.
And actually, all the chairs in this room are fabulous, are they not? Sort of exciting. Women and girls being major drivers of every single one of these goals. And it's amazing when I'm in rooms like this, when you ask people what their favorite goal is, or the goal that's most important to them, men often answer, I have a daughter, therefore goal 5, as though having a daughter is the thing that drives you over that hump. But for so many people who don't have daughters or don't feel connected to this goal, why aren't we talking about this? And how do we get them to that place of recognizing that women and girls permeate the entire agenda?
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's a fantastic question, and it's often something you hear, especially if there's, a violation against women. People say, well, no, I think about your daughters, your wives, your sisters, and I genuinely despise that comment. Because women are deserving of rights and equal opportunity regardless of their relationship to a male.
Say it again. You hear that, right? I see we're aligned.
Exactly. Well, but I recognize that it's not an easy conversation, because a lot of people, when they want to talk about economic growth, want to talk about economic growth, right? So they want to talk about unemployment and new industries and the fourth industrial revolution. They want to have these conversations, and when you say, yeah, but women and girls, they're like, no, we're talking about economic growth. And I think what we need to be doing is we have a huge absence of data. We do. The data that we have now, while limited, does point to the fact that women and girls, if equally educated and employed, would be the single greatest economic stimulus globally, right? And it's not a surprise. And when we talk now about, there's been, somebody always says to me, well, we've really started talking about women's rights since 2010, 2000. And I'm like, well, but why? Ask ourselves what spurred on this conversation. And it's the economic recession. It's the fact that we started having predominantly two-income households, that women needed to work for economic growth, for economic sustainability in their countries. That is when the conversation about women's rights really took off in 2008 and 2009. That's when we started having a lot more engagement on women's economic empowerment and women's education. That was really what started it, was an economic need. So when people talk about, be it global health security or education and say, you know, it's just the right thing to do. Yes, it's the right thing to do. We can start the conversation like that, but then let's back it up with statistics. Let's back it up with statistics. Statistically, without the equal employment and education of women and girls, without women's empowerment, without their political inclusion, their economic inclusion, we will not be able to accomplish these goals. By every data measurement, every data point around the world. And it is only with their full participation, with their full contribution, and with them being the architects of many of these projects and proposals, particularly in the Global South, that we're actually going to make any gains. Those are the statistics. So whenever somebody asks me, but why women and girls, I say it's just the smart thing to do. It's the practical thing to do. If you're a doctor, you're going to say, let's do the smartest, quickest thing to be able to treat a patient. The smartest, quickest thing in this case is to educate and employ women and girls.
We can clap for that. So how do we spread that message? Because as you said, when people ask you that question, you have the statistics, but maybe it applies actually to the entire global agenda that, as you pointed out in your talk, these goals are amazing and many people are already working on them, but they don't necessarily know this sort of graphical representation of it. So how do we get that message out effectively?
So it's twofold in my opinion. Part of the challenge is the inclusivity of the process itself. Right? And a lot of people may not know about these goals because they haven't necessarily been included in the conversation yet, right? And that's not to say people have lacked in trying, but it's just saying that those channels do not yet exist. And that we actually need to cultivate and create them. We need to go into spaces we haven't previously gone into. We need to find partners we haven't previously found. And we need to start saying, let's have this conversation in new ways. And that might mean if you're talking about something like reduced inequalities, you're going to, you know, local nurses and doctors and saying, let's talk about inequalities within the treatment sector. It means if you're going to reach a general amount of education in most communities, you're going to be going to elementary and high school teachers. You're going to be going to groups of people that are not traditionally in spaces like this. So a huge part of it is outreach, is engagement, and is actually the sense, because I believe I'm a very practical person, and I from my own work experience and from my own experiences globally, have seen that when you are presented with a platform or a medium through which you can actually engage, and there is meaningful engagement, there is a response for your community, for your family, then you actually do reach out and engage. But if there has been no proven response, if it is just this idea sitting in New York or sitting in Bonn or sitting in Geneva, you're not going to reach out. You're not going to take the time and effort out of your own space, out of the work you're doing for your community and say, maybe this is a vehicle I could use. So that's a huge proponent, and part of that has to be engaging governments, particularly in countries where this agenda needs to be implemented. It has to be engaging local governments, city mayors, regional governments. It has to be engaging business leaders who actually can drive a lot of this through their own workplace. The second, part of really kind of getting the message of the 2030 agenda across is that we all speak a very different language. And I don't mean in terms of, English and German. I mean, the best example I can give you is we were talking about peace and security once. And I was talking with a colleague of mine who is an American fighter pilot, 4-star general. And he said, security to me means getting all my men out alive. I said, security to me means my sisters can go to school and come home and I don't have to worry about them when they leave the house. We were both talking about security, but the meaning is fundamentally different, right? And so the challenge there is recognizing that we can't just say sustainable development goals or economic growth, because to a CEO and to a mother, those mean different things. And that we have to start talking to people in their language. We have to start talking to local community workers about how this impacts their local community. Because if I'm having trouble feeding myself, or I'm scared my kids are not going to make it home, I'm not going to be concerned about how this impacts another country. That's the reality of it. If I'm scared that I won't be able to feed my kids that month, my focus on my economic growth is going to be paramount. And that's a human reality. And we have to be able to speak that language and say, this is how it will individually impact you. This is how it will impact your family. This is how it will impact your community. We recognize what this means.
Yeah. And it engages people in a way that feels very personal, which is a huge challenge traditionally. But for all of these people who are in the room, who are obviously here because they take this work, and we all do, very seriously, what do you think is the biggest challenge we face, and how do we kind of meet that? You mentioned that there's not always good news to be had. These days it can feel like. But is that the challenge, or is there something more that we need to be thinking about as we try to advance these goals?
I think in the near future, so I'll answer specifically to the near future because our attention spans are slowly getting shorter every time an emergency pops up or a catastrophe. Or in the near future, I think the single greatest problem is being strategic and being very deliberate. And I say that with full knowledge. Every time something happens, everybody kind of really focuses in on it. They spend a few weeks, months really dedicated to this issue. But then something else happens, right? And everybody's interests and resources all divert to the next emergency. And I think if we're really going to be able to achieve the SDGs, then we have to be relentless and we have to be strategic. We have to recognize that this is a long-term goal. This is not going to happen overnight, and we cannot continue to get sidelined by emergencies. They exist, or by political whims, or they exist, and they are problematic. But the greatest challenge is every time, and it happens every time I turn on the news and I see a protest, or every time that happens, the follow-through isn't there. The follow-through isn't there. There is no, this is our end game. The Sustainable Development Goals actually present an end game. We're saying this is where we want to reach. We're not protesting anything. What we're saying is this is the goal. This is where we can go if we stay deliberate, if we stay focused, and if we don't get, because political parties, heads of state, will change over the next 14 years. They'll change. Technology will change. Everything will change over the next 14 years. So if we continue to allow this agenda to be shaped by its environment entirely, I don't think we're going to be able to achieve it. We have to recognize that we can work on our individual level or we can be passionate about global issues and what's happening, but at the same time, we have to remain relentless in our pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals. And a lot of that will be about, as my sister calls it, solidarity. But a lot of that will be about providing safe spaces for ourselves to be able to have those conversations where we say, yes, this is happening to, potentially even my community in country X. However, the end game is larger. And so I think it's going to have to come down to strategy and being deliberate and having conversations that we don't expect to have. The most successful I've ever been in my work was with speaking with people who fundamentally disagreed with me. Most of them left the room agreeing with me. But some...
What did you do to make that happen? Can we know?
I spent 6 months having very in-depth conversations, and I let them set the agenda, and I showed up in their homes and in their workspaces and where they felt most comfortable. And that was the way for them to feel like this was something within their control and within their ownership. And I spoke to them about what their priorities were and what their interests were to ensure that my agenda moved forward. And some still disagree with me to this day, but because of the relationship that created, there's still an amount of respect where they don't deliberately hinder my work. And that's the other aspect of it. So even if you may not find an ally, as long as you don't find a complete enemy in that way, or you don't find a roadblock, I think you're doing the right thing. Not everybody will agree with you. Not everybody will say this is the most paramount global agenda, but you just need enough people on your side and enough people out of the way that you can continue to move forward.
I love this idea of the agenda being a kind of end game, so operating at a high level, but then the reality of implementing the agenda being very personal and grassroots and on the ground. But I have to ask, and forgive me if this is a hard question, are you optimistic about our ability to meet this agenda in 2030?
I am, and I'll tell you why. I'm one of 11 children. So my mother, I would ask her, how'd you raise us? Because I see my sister now has 3 kids, and I have heart palpitations when I go to the mall with them. Because first to get them in the car takes 4 hours, and then I'm always worried I'm going to lose a kid and they're not even my children. Like it's a very stressful period in my life every time I leave the house with her and her children, and I love them, so I keep doing it to myself. But I asked my mom, my parents moved from Libya to Canada. My mom was quite young, didn't speak the language, was raising these children in a 1-bedroom apartment. My dad was at work all day doing his residency. And my mom would say these were some of the most difficult moments of my life. And I would say, well, how do you get through them? Because she'd have a diaper shortage or an emergency, or they couldn't pay the electricity bill or whatever it may be. And she said, I honestly just thought about what it would be like when you were all grown up. If I could just raise you right, what it would be like in 20 years. So yeah, it was hard within that hour, but in 20 years, you guys could all be upstanding members of society if I do this right. And I think that probably is the most encouraging thing. Every time I have a problem, first off, I don't have 11 kids, so I'm very thankful my problems are never that big. But the recognition, the wisdom of at the time, a 20-year-old immigrant to Canada with these children, the recognition that, this is this is a temporary emergency. This is a temporary issue, which you can be devastated about. You can. But the end game is you get to raise these children and they can go on and they can do wonderful and fantastic things. And a lot of it is sheer force, right? That's why I always say if we have women and girls in the room, we're going to get a lot more done because there is no other option. For my mom, there was genuinely no other option. And I think we do have to look at this agenda the same way. I'm exceptionally optimistic because what's the other option?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, do you have a final call to action for us, for everyone in this room and watching out in cyberspace?
Honestly, my call to action is to get off computers. I know this is tough.
Don't log off, though, if you're watching the live stream.
Well, after I've spoken. No, I'm kidding. No, but seriously, stop reading the news incessantly. Don't get devastated by every little thing. But instead, go and try to find out why this is happening. If you notice that there are changes in your own community or that there are sentiments that you don't agree with that are happening in your own city, go into those neighborhoods, have those conversations and say, what is it? Because it's so easy for us in today's day and age to be able to vilify anybody who doesn't agree with us. And a lot of people don't agree with me on basis of my appearance or my political views or my religious views alone. And knowing that, there are two options. You can either continue to work only with people who look and think and act like you do and want the same things that you do, or you can go and seek out people who, on the surface, seem as though they completely oppose those things. And seek them out and say, what is it that you actually want out of this movement or out of this individual or out of this campaign or out of this process? And how can we work together? And this can happen locally in communities where you might have, resource challenges or what it may be. And this can happen, here in Germany or in the United States or wherever you are. But have conversations with people who you normally wouldn't have conversations with. And don't have them behind a keyboard because then they always get mean. Twitter is a dark alley. You should never go down alone. But it's have those conversations and force yourself to actually look at things from a different perspective and to recognize that what words mean to you is not necessarily the same thing they mean to everybody else. Because if we're really going to reach this, we're going to need to get a lot more people on board. Yes. And some of them may not agree with us now, but may be our strongest allies in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. Cultivate common ground, right?
You said it much better than I did.
No. I was just a good listener. Thank you so much, Dr. Ala Murabit. This has been wonderful. We were just so lucky to have Ala today and really to have everybody in this room. I've got to tell you, one of my favorite things about doing this work is I get to see innovation in action, to get to see us push ourselves and each other to envision kind of new fixes to these age-old problems. And there's probably no better example of that at this conference than the 2030 Hive Mind game. So it is my pleasure to introduce again Ishbel Matheson to tell us a little bit more about that and walk us through the magic of it.
Okay, so I am here to introduce you to 2030 Hive Mind. So I will be walking you through how to play the game in a little bit. But before I do, I want to give you a bit of a context and say a couple of things. Before I give you that background to why we developed the game, just to say it would be really useful if, as I'm talking, you could all get your smartphones out, because you're going to need a smartphone to play this game. If you could all get your smartphones out of your bag, if you're not ready, got them on the table, put them on the table. The other thing that would be great is in your delegates pack, if you go to page 3 of the delegates pack on the agenda, you'll see this activation code as well. So you're going to need that as well when I walk you through it. So if you could get those things prepared. The third, and probably the most important thing I'm going to say in this entire next few minutes is you can only actually understand the game like playing it. It's like any other game in the world, whether it's Monopoly, Snap, any other complex online game. This isn't a complex game, actually. It's very simple, but you can only really understand it by playing it. So I'm going to walk you through the ideas behind it, but you'll only be able to see how it works by actually getting in, jumping in, and doing it yourself. So really hope that you all manage to do that. Okay, so what is 2030 Hive Mind and why did we develop it? And in fact, some of you might even be thinking, why play a game? Because the SDGs tackle some of the biggest problems in the world, whether it's global hunger, poverty, climate change. These aren't the type of things you should be playing games about. They're far too serious for that. But as we all know, and several people have already touched on already, to achieve the SDGs, we all need to think differently. We all need to do different things and have different approaches. And we think the game is one such fresh approach. And we developed it because we think that the SDGs is such a big agenda. They're more ambitious than ever before in history. And, you know, many people are just frankly daunted by the whole idea of it. How can we implement this huge agenda? So through this lens of a game, we thought you could better understand some of the things that will make the SDGs a reality. So how to make good policies and how to stick at them over, you know, many the whole agenda to move forward. On a practical term as well, it's also just a safe space, because some of you may already be working on the SDGs as part of your regular job, but this is a time to set aside the day job and actually just think differently. You know, break out of your usual way of thinking and actually think again, how do we make this huge agenda work? So the last thing to say before I move on is this is actually a world first, this game, and you all are our very first testers. So we hope you enjoy the game. The game is yours, and we hope that you'll play it as much as you can through the conference, because I think we'll get a lot out of it if we do. Okay, so how do we play the game? So 3 important steps to remember. So you first have to download the app. Now, if you haven't already done so, you can go to the App Store now, look for 2030 Hive Mind, download it, do it now. You should all be searching for that in your App Store. When you get it downloaded, you should create a username. Now, I very boringly created the username of Ishbel, but you can choose anything. Let your imagination run. Your second SDG persona. The third, you're logged in and got your username. You have to scan the code that's in the delegates pack to actually activate the game. And you have to also allow the app to access your phone camera, because you're going to need the camera to use your scanner as you go along. So I'll just say that again, and then I'll give you a little bit about the fictional country that this game is played about whilst you're getting yourself into it. So first, download the app, which is 2030 Hive Mind. Create a username, anything you like. Scan the code that's in your delegates pack. Allow the app to access your phone. So as you're getting on with that, I'm going to explain a little bit about the country that out how to help this country and how to get it back on track to achieve the SDGs. And just to say, if you're struggling a bit to get up and running, at the end of the session and throughout the entire conference, there will be people on hand to help you. Our very brilliant super users who have this special pin bag, as Ala was referring to, and also actually the game developers who've worked with ODI researchers over many months to develop this game are also here, Sam and Simon. So they are also here to help us if there are any kind of issues getting into it. Okay, so let's go into the game. So you will be given a goal to achieve. Every person has a goal to achieve. You'll know your goal. It's up in the right-hand corner of the screen. And each goal is color-coded, by the way, so they're consistent through the game, and your name will also be color-coded in the kind of league table that I'll talk about later, in line with your goal. So you'll be given a goal and also a budget to help fund policies. Now, in this game, we're only actually trying to reach 7 goals. And those are the 6 that are going to be reviewed by the high-level political forum in July at the UN. Plus the 7th is climate action, because it's climate change affects the achievement of so many of the other goals. So what you're seeing on screen is your policy deck. Everybody starts with 5 policies. Now, these policies are randomly allocated, so you might have some that are useful to you, or you might have some that are not useful to you. There are dozens of policies to collect, and again, these have been selected on the basis that our ODI researchers have basically selected those that are likely to be most impactful on helping us achieve the SDGs. Next thing to know is that time and money, just as in the real world, are critical. So each year in our fictional land is 2 hours of this conference time. I'll say that again because that's quite important. So each year in our fictional land is 2 hours in this conference. And each year, or every 2 hours, you will get a new budget to spend. So by the end of the festival, all of us will have spent 13 years together. And we'll be able to see whether or not we've achieved the SDGs. Now, for those of you who are thinking, oh, I might do this or I might not, here's an important incentive to keep going with it. If you don't claim your budget at the beginning of every 2 hours and join halfway through, you've effectively frittered away valuable resources that could have helped the people in this country. Because it'll be much harder for you to spend your entire budget in 20 minutes or 40 minutes or an hour. So it's best to log on at the beginning of the 2-hour sessions. You have to check in regularly, although you don't have to play constantly. We do want you also to go and listen to the sessions. But you need to check in regularly, and we will pause the game at the end of every day. So this is your daily budget. Every day, here's another figure that's also quite important, you get $1,000 to spend, but it's a day in the fictional world. So a day in the fictional world is equivalent to 3 seconds in our time. So every 3 seconds, literally, you're getting $1,000 to spend. So if you set this green slider on the policy and allocate some funds into it, it will start channeling money towards that policy until you change it. And you can use your $1,000 across the different policies, split among different policies, but your spend is always capped at $1,000 a day. So how do you know what policies to fund? So we've got lots of node images on the slide decks, and those show you how the policies are affecting different goals. So this policy is affecting 3 goals, and the thicker the arrow indicates how effective it is. So if it's a fat arrow, it's a really good policy to help you get to this goal. If it's a dotted line, it has a negative effect on the goal. So actually, it's helping one goal, it's making one goal go backwards. And if it's sort of in the middle, it means it is having a positive effect. But there may be other policies out there which are even better. What happens if you want to get better and more effective policies? This is where your camera on your phone comes into play. You can click on the blue bar at the bottom of the, and I'm looking at a screen here. You can click on the blue bar at the bottom of the screen, and it will show you, flip around and show you a code. You will be able to scan the code from the person who has the policy and take it onto your game. Now, it isn't free, like anything in life. It'll cost you $200,000 to copy a policy into your deck. But you also gain the same amount by sharing your policy with someone else. So actually, if you're running out of cash, or you've got a load of cash, this is a good way to kind of get through those funds that I was talking about. Okay, so crucially, how do we activate the policies? You cannot activate the policies just by playing continually on your own. You have to work together. As we said at the beginning, the SDGs are a collaborative venture. You need to build political will around them and momentum. And basically, to get into the activation zone for a policy, you basically all have to work together. If it stops getting, so it may get into the activation zone, you may activate it, but if you all stop playing and go off and do something else, it'll drop out again. So you need to keep going at it. Again, 2 points for you to remember. Only 20 policies can be activated at any enough time. And just like the real world again, there are not enough resources to go around. Okay, so I can see some of you tapping away on your phones already, so I'm hoping you're getting into the way it can be played. So you'll be able to track how you're doing because there's a global overview on the game. So if you go into that, you'll be able to see how these circles start to fill up with all the cash that you're pouring into them. Or indeed how badly a goal is doing. And again, a lot of people have to play the game in order to make the goals succeed. Because if only a few of us play it, that means it's going to be so much tougher to achieve these goals. Okay, the other thing is these very amazing interactive games tables, which I've seen some of you already look at out there. Some of you have asked why hive mind. This is a bit of an indication as to why we thought that. You can track how you're playing on these interactive games. This blob is an individual player. And that blob shows you the policies that you're funding and also the different goals that actually you're affecting with your policy. So it gives you a way of seeing up close how you're working and interacting with other people. So you can go, as you're going around the conference, you can drop off at the games tables. They're amazing things, they're really fun things, and it gives you another chance to talk together and think about how you can build consensus around the individual policies and goals. Okay, the other way we're going to keep you on track of how you're doing through the conference is to have a little look at the NNC news channel, our very own news channel.
Good morning, you're with NNC. I'm William Davies.
And I'm Ella Bonnard.
And let's start with today's top story.
And our top stories are going to be how well you guys are doing, effectively, whether you're helping the people in this country or whether you're actually hindering them. So again, the incentive is really to get out there and try and make progress in our fictional country. The last thing I should talk about a little bit is where you can get help, just as you kind of work your way through the game. I talked earlier about this badge. This kind of donates super new users around the venue. That's people who've been playing on the game already and know how it works. So if you're struggling a little bit with some of the ideas or something's not working, just go up to one of these guys and we'll find a way of helping you. And just to say, you know, if I'm somebody that's wearing a super user's badge and I've been playing it, you know, over a few weeks, but just for a couple of hours at a time, my son said to me, if you can be a super user, Mum, anyone can. So everybody can play this game. There's also a how to play section in the app. And there's also a listing in the app which I've been told isn't a league. I cannot call it a league table of winners and losers. I have to call it an index of impactful players. You can pick your own version of that, but basically we'll be able to say who is being most effective at the game, and we'll talk to you throughout the game. There's recap sessions at the beginning and end of the days about who's doing well, who needs to make a bit of progress. So we'll give you a recap. And the game isn't static, and the world isn't static, and the things that are going on in this country are not static. So there may be a few unexpected events, things that happen in the fictional world that will throw your goals and the progress towards the SDGs on track. And we'll have to, as a group, overcome those and figure out a way forward. And at the end of the game, yes, there will be a surprise, a prize at the end of it. That is a surprise, what it is, but there will be a prize. That's an additional incentive. And the other thing is, you might want to know, is when does the game start? So I never thought in my career I would be able to say this, but I have been given a button. And I would like to say, we're now in 2017. There are 13 years to achieve the goals. The time to start our country and their urgent problem is now. So, everyone, let the game begin.
I am so excited to see how this unfolds, and I will be holding my government accountable. That is you all. So we can't wait to see how this happens. And you're going to get to start playing as we break for coffee. So for sure, get in the game, get excited about the game. Find those super users wearing their pin, Ishbel being one of those, to ask them. Use the black tables outside to play with the model that Ishbel showed you. Also, the free ice cream team, Simon, Sam, et al., who designed the game are here, so find them if you like. Visit our Knowledge and Innovation Fair happening outside. You can't miss it. There's also a live stage, which you have a schedule for in your agenda. It's an extra insert, where we'll be having live talks going on the entire day. So you can check those out in the coffee break as well. And though Allah said that Twitter is a black hole, in the spirit of driving change, let's make it a happy place today. So please keep tweeting. Our handle is @GlobalFestIdeas. The hashtag is GFI4SD. Yes. On Twitter, Instagram, and any other platforms that you use. And then we will expect you back in here at 10:55 for a sharp start at 11 o'clock. I know I don't have to tell you all that twice. So thanks so much. Go have coffee, and we'll see you in a little bit.